much harder. Ever since the pandemic, many options have popped up and requirements have been really dynamic. Some universities are test optional while still recommending the test. Some still require the test. More universities are open to more tests. Home testing has been made available to students and a lot more things. Now, in this ambit, one of the toughest choices that a student who wants to go for a master's program or a management program has to make is whether to take the GRE or the GMAT. On one side, there is the kind of universities and programs that have to be considered. And on the other side, you need to see which test fits you really well academically. Now, with so many factors and parameters contributing to this decision, it becomes imperative that you get experts on board. Experts who have years of expertise helping students get their highest scores on each test, and experts who know the admission landscape as much as they know to breathe. And we have the perfect people on this panel today who would give you complete clarity from both perspectives. I would like to extend a warm welcome to the admissions experts Vikram Balla and Divyani Thakur, and our academic experts Ram Kumar and Raji Shankar. Welcome to all of you.
Welcome and thank you,
Right.
Seema.
Thank you. Now, to talk a little bit more about the experts who we have on this panel, let's start with Vikram. I mean, he has completed his master's from UK and he understands the international admissions process extremely well. I mean, the fact that, he has over 17 years of experience in advising students on their plans for higher education abroad makes him one of our most coveted, admissions experts. Talking about Divyani, she has pursued her master's in counseling psychology and has over 10 years of experience in study abroad domain. She has also formerly served as the destination manager for US admissions at a really eminent counseling agency, and also holds a distinction of having serviced high school students in IB curriculum. And besides that, she has also gotten her advanced course in higher education from the University of California, Los Angeles. You cannot have better than that. Welcome, Divyani.
Thank you so much.
Right. Now we have our academic experts. Raji, she is a brilliant senior master trainer. She's a passionate educator and a compassionate human being at that. And she has over 2 decades of experience in higher education training. Now, armed with a postgraduate degree in English and an innate skill for breaking down the most complex concepts into smaller palatable bits for her students, she knows the verbal part of both the tests in and out. Welcome, Raji.
Thank you. Thank you, Seema. Welcome.
You're most welcome. Yeah. To talk about Ram, finally, the formidable force behind our academic team. Ram Kumar is our academic head at Manya, the Princeton Review. To say the least, he is the heart, brain, and soul behind the entire formidable academic team. And he has over 20 years of experience behind him in education and test prep. And having taken tests multiple times and scored 99 percentile, both the tests, I mean, we've got the perfect experts for you on this panel. Welcome to all of you once again. Now, okay, I'm sure that, our attendees cannot wait to actually dive into exactly what we're going to talk about with respect to GRE versus GMAT. My first question to you is, Vikram, I mean, to really get started, from an overall perspective, how should the student decide, which exam to take, like whether a GRE or a GMAT? Where do we start?
All right, thank you, Seema. I'll start in very broad terms, and to answer some of your questions, I'll pull up relevant slides to make it easier for our viewers here tonight. So which exam to take, that depends on the acceptance of the GRE and the GMAT for the different academic programs students are targeting. Mm-hmm. It also depends on the aspiration of a particular student for a specific academic program. And for the same student, it depends on their aptitude to excel on the GRE or GMAT, as they are slightly different exams. So in very broad terms, these are the factors students need to keep in mind when they decide which exam they should take.
Right. So, okay, let's start with the GRE. I mean, under what circumstances do you usually say that the student should take the GRE?
All right, that's a good question. So, basically, the GRE should be taken for all non-medical graduate programs in the US. Okay, so when we talk about graduate programs, the term here includes MS and PhD because both the master's and the PhD are offered by the graduate school of every university or many universities in the US. And that's what the term graduate programs refers to. So anything such as master's or PhD in computer science, STEM related graduate programs such as mechanical, civil, electrical, whatever pure and applied sciences such as mathematics, advanced mathematics, physics, or chemistry, arts or social science based programs such as psychology or economics or sociology. So this is where you really need to take the GRE. This is where the GRE is the required and preferred exam. So while the GRE is not taken for pure medical programs in the US, it is required for masters or PhD in life sciences related or specialized masters. It's not a medical school entrance exam, but it is required for specialized masters in life sciences. Now, of late, the GRE is accepted by business schools, and most of the business schools in the US, as well as other countries, do accept the GRE in lieu of the GMAT. So that is a trend that is more than 5 years old. It's an established acceptance criteria now. So that's one thing that's actually a good news for students who are undecided between management related masters or a graduate program in another field. So a student who is unsure of whether they will go for a MS non-business degree in the near future or MBA are therefore advised to take the GRE. And by as an extension of that, GRE keeps all options open for undecided students.
Right. I mean, so since business schools actually accept both the GRE and GMAT that you mentioned, and one of the students have already asked this question as well, which of these exams should a student aspiring for management studies actually take?
All right, let's look at that. So MBA.com, which is the test provider for GMAT, says, of course, that is the preferred exam for MBA admissions. ETS says that GRE is equally accepted for MBA now. 99% of MBA programs in the US accept the GRE. And it is common knowledge that, coming back to the GMAT, it is common knowledge that the GMAT should be taken for business programs in the US and other countries. So this is in fact the $1 million question, when to use the GMAT or when to use the GRE. So let's dwell a little bit upon this.
Okay.
So a management aspirant can take the GRE, can take either test, as GRE is accepted by 99% of business programs. But there are other considerations that makes GRE a preferred test. So for whom is GRE a preferred test? For any typical BTech or BE student in India who is choosing between core MS or an academic shift to business management, a student who has completed a 3-year bachelor's degree in India and a 2-year master's degree in India in arts, and is aspiring to focus in their academic field by pursuing a specialized master's or PhD within their academic field in the US. So this is as far as US is concerned. Now, selectively, GRE is also an academic entrance requirement for certain master's programs in other countries. So in Germany, for example, GRE is a highly sought after admissions prerequisite. So a student aspiring for a technical master's in Germany at a TU9 university or at a University of Applied Sciences, and within this group of TU's technical universities and within this group of top universities of applied sciences, especially the students who are aiming for the top campuses amongst these institutions should definitely take the GRE and get a good score. Now, in the case of the UK, the London School of Economics clearly says on its website that GRE is required for applicants without a UK undergraduate degree in economics, and this must not be older than 5 years. So for any student who's looking at, let us say, a master's in economics or a master's in economics and finance or a blended master's program at LSE, they are required to take the GRE. So these are sort of the circumstances under which a student would opt to take the GRE. Now, the GMAT is the preferred test for any student who has decided that their future lies in business management. They are clear of it. They are not considering core technical or core social science based specialized masters. So for them, GMAT is the preferred test. A small percentage of non-US business schools may actually favor the GMAT over the GRE. I'll just present some more detailed information regarding that in a minute.
Okay.
And then there are some other factors that make GMAT a preferred test. I'll just present some information regarding that in a minute as well.
Right. I just want to tell all of the people who are asking questions in the chat that we would be having a Q&A right at the end of the discussion, and we would answer all of these questions. And I think some of these questions are also being answered while, within the discussion itself. So, yeah, please, Vikram.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that, Seema. So let's look at when to consider taking the GMAT. So if a student is equally comfortable between the testing format of the GRE as well as the GMAT, they may choose to appear for the GMAT as it is a slightly more difficult test and it may make a marginal favorable impact on their application. Let me just put it that way. We just said that 99% of business schools accept GRE in lieu of GMAT, but this is one factor or one situation under which a student can plan to take the GMAT instead. And how should they decide between GRE and GMAT? I think the best way to decide is to go to the Princeton Review website and take a free practice test and then see which format resonates better with their academic preparation.
Right. And I think more details would come their way when, Raji and Ram takes them through as well. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. This is just a general guideline that I'm presenting here to get people to, instead of speculating on their aptitude or instead of speculating on their comfort level, we feel that a sample test and actually sampling the curriculum and test design is the best way to make that choice. And the academic team will present in detail on that.
Right.
All right. And then another factor to keep in mind is that we need to consider the acceptance by business schools. So while GRE is, so it again comes down to where you're going to apply. So GRE is widely accepted in lieu of GMAT. The question is, do any business schools have a preference? So the answer to that is that it depends completely on each individual business school and their policy for the standardized test. So M7 business schools such as Harvard, Stanford, and Chicago, they do not have a preference for GRE or GMAT for their MBA program. Closer home, a lot of experienced professionals apply to the executive full-time MBA program of, let's say, IIM ABC or even some of the other IIMs. And these are actually one-year MBAs, which are very similar in format to the international MBAs.
Right.
So the IIM A and IIM B, for example, they accept both the GRE or the GMAT for their MBA programs. So let us just quickly look at whether there are any exceptions or whether there are any exceptional circumstances under which a student would then consider taking GMAT apart from their comfort level, which we just spoke about. So yes, the answer to that is a very few business schools do still prefer the GMAT over the GRE. The Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta, IMC, requires they look only at the GMAT for their experienced full-time MBA. London Business School, they state their preference indirectly.
Okay.
They say that they accept GRE for admission. However, when it comes to recruitment, when it comes to jobs and careers, many of the employers in that come to London Business School, or many of the employers that LBS graduates typically seek employment with, do ask for a GMAT score. So indirectly, they are stating their preference for GMAT, or indirectly, they are advising students about the importance of GMAT, not just for the admissions process, but also for the recruitment process in the UK. And then the Rotman MBA, which is offered by the University of Toronto. It's the leading MBA program in Canada, and it's one of the top MBA programs in North America and worldwide. They accept GRE, but when it comes to candidate scholarships, their scholarship policy is more explicitly linked with a GMAT score. So
Right.
Under these conditions, a student can actually think about taking the GMAT instead of the GRE from an admissions perspective. So just to sort of summarize that, hiring is a hidden factor that swings this debate in favor of the GMAT. And in our experience, students whom we have sent to North American universities as well as British universities for MBA programs, they often report that when they look at jobs with traditional MBA-centric industries such as management consulting, investment banking, financial services, the companies that they talk to look at their GMAT scores while hiring them for internships and for full-time jobs. And as we just referred to the example of Rotman, there are other business schools also which say that GMAT, which actually equate scholarship with GMAT score. So these are some of the factors that swing this debate in favor of the GMAT for a student who is sure that they want to be in management. For a student who is sure that they want to study management, and for a student who is equally comfortable with both test formats.
Right. So, I mean, you do get a lot of students like who might actually, swing both ways and have a lot of these confusion as well, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. And as part of our admissions counseling service at Manya, we do help each student decide which is the best test for them to take. But I think Divyani, who is working one-on-one with MBA students from our side as part of our MBA counseling program, she is actually better placed to give you a more in-depth look at when the GMAT or the GRE should be used and what the outcome for the applicants was.
Right. I mean, Divyani, you have been closely working with the students and have first-hand experience exactly all the struggles that they face, and you have been putting them in the right direction. So how has that experience been, and how what kind of cases have you really seen with respect to the students, the way they have to actually choose, and how have you actually guided them as well?
All right. First of all, good evening to all of you. So for me, each and every profile is really unique. I cannot have some preset notions about a profile. I will check, I'll have to see the educational background, quality of work experience, as well as the destination preference, as well as what kind of career goals a client has. So whenever there is a client, I have certain parameters. I look at those parameters. I understand the career goals. I understand the background and comfort of the person. And according to these 5 to 7 parameters, we have open discussions, and then we make a final decision, okay, which test you have to take. Like Vikram was sharing that, there are certain applicants which are applying to programs, what we call in different departments. So you can apply to a program in a business school, but you are also applying to arts and sciences department. So there are many parameters when it comes to destination preference. What kind of programs are you looking for? and your comfort level, your education background, whether you are from humanities background, you are from very strong STEM background. So these are the various parameters. So that's how I take it forward. Yeah.
So can you kind of like show us maybe in your experience some cases where students, where you have guided students towards a certain exam and basis their background?
Yeah. I think we can present the slide. Wait a minute.
Sure.
Vikram, can you present the slide? Actually, I can't see the slide.
All right, I'll just do that. Give me a second.
And meanwhile, to all the students who are actually asking a lot of questions there, all of these questions would be asked by the end of the discussion from all the perspectives that you're actually looking at. In fact, we're having a lot of questions popping into the chat box while we are discussing this. So these would be answered in a Q&A session right towards the end of it. So everybody, I'd ask you to kind of like stay tuned and get all perspectives and to really understand and make a very informed decision. Vikram, are you able to get that on board? Okay. Want to go to state universities? Is it okay? I think it should be.
Yeah. You can go to public universities, you can go to private university. There is no problem.
Right.
So here are a few case studies. These are the applicants that I have worked with. So let us discuss profile 1. So look at the background of this girl. She has a economics honors background from one of the premium institution of India. And let us go to the program that she is applying, Masters of Public Policy and Master of Economics. And the preferred test here was GRE. So why was GRE chosen here? So what do you think, Seema? You want to give some insights? What do you feel about this profile? Why GRE was preferred?
Okay, I'm going to like go off the shoot, like because she liked it, or maybe she took the test, or maybe obviously from an admissions perspective, there was something to actually go with, or there's a reason maybe she's a little broader.
Yeah, that was actually the secondary reason. The primary reason was her choice of program. She is not applying to a business school per se. She's applying to public policy program, which is a different department altogether. And she's applying to a pure economics and quantitative economics. So just because of the choice of the program, many of the university, they do not accept GMAT. So it was very straightforward because the programs that we are applying, they are not accepting GMAT. So it doesn't make sense that we should go for GMAT. So in her case, GRE was preferred. Now let us come to the second profile. Now see, so she also has
just putting you in there. I just wanted to ask this thing. That means the students need to be really clear about, when they are very clear about their university decisions or what they want to get into in terms of program, it makes it easy for you to have that.
Yeah, because see, as we have already discussed, if we apply to business schools, you can either take a GRE and GMAT, and there are thousands of parameters, no exaggeration, you can decide on it. But the choice of program here is public policy, which is a different program altogether and in a different department, and economics. So it was a very straightforward choice here that we can't take GMAT because GMAT is not accepted. So only GRE. Okay. But now, very interestingly, the second profile also has the same background in economics. But she took GMAT. So now can you guess why she took GMAT and why GMAT preferred
based on what you just told me for the previous case where, the universities actually accepted only GMAT, maybe in this case, she had the, universities accepted both maybe, or maybe the choice of a program.
Yeah. So here, can you see the program is finance program, which was in different business schools. She applied to HEC Paris, European Business School, London Business School, ESSEC, as well as Imperial College London. So these were the business schools, and she was herself very comfortable with GMAT. The GRE was accepted, but she was comfortable. But we do have an option, as Vikram has said, when it comes to certain European and UK-based schools, they do accept GRE. But if you want to make an impression, and her score was above 700. She knew it quantitatively. She was strong. Verbal reasoning was also strong. And her program was in a typical business school. She was applying to a Master of Finance program. So GMAT was her first choice. Okay.
Right. I mean, that just flips it entirely, isn't it? When you just think that, oh yeah, this is the only option. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that parameter itself actually flips the entire scene around, or, the preference around. So do we get a case where maybe both are optional still, what are the parameters should the student really look at? Again, I'm sure that there are various other factors also that come into play.
I think, first of all, the destination that you want to go to. Second is the program that you want to apply to. Okay.
Right.
If you're applying to the business school, both the options are open for us. But if you are applying to different program, let's say you are applying to economics, you are applying to public policy, you are applying to any other program, like it could be related to, mathematics, let's say, pure mathematics and accountancy, then you have to decide which test you feel more comfortable with. And again, I'm coming back to the very basic thing. I think in that case, the ball is in the court of the applicant, because they could decide about, how's their aptitude, what they feel more comfortable with. The best way is to take a mock test, a diagnostic for both of them, and take a decision if you have not already made up your mind.
Right.
So
right, go on. I mean, I was just looking at Spandan Sen, and I was like figuring out, we have a Bachelor of Engineering and then you have a Master of Finance, like an entirely different profile is what you actually put out there.
So coming to Spandan is extremely passionate about finance. His father is a lawyer. He has been exposed to finance indirectly in his engineering field because of the, he has done a lot of extracurricular activities to make up his profile. And now see, he's also applying to typical business schools, LBS, IE Madrid, HEC, European Business School, and engineering background. In his case, he was like, I am very strong in mathematics. I want to take a GMAT. I want to make an impression, because my program, they accept both GMAT and GRE. And he's again a 700 plus. So what I'm trying to say here, each profile is unique. And, it is very personalized choice what you're going to do. After, understanding your program and destination, if the board test is accepted, absolutely, it's a personalized choice. But then see how we have different examples here with similar kind of background or different background and ending up taking one test over the other.
So, I mean, what I've understood about Spandan is that he made that personal choice with respect to, he had, both of them would have been equally open to him, but that was more of a personal choice, right?
Yeah. He wanted to make an impression, and he did. He had a 730 GMAT.
Right. That's amazing.
Yeah. So we could have more. Can we move to the next slide, Vikram?
Vikram, can we move to the next slide? Wait, is it a connection issue? Just a moment.
Yeah.
Okay, meanwhile, just checking, give me a second. Okay, there's one, like Rohit Gupta is asking, meanwhile, we might as well take a question. What would be good for masters, GRE or GMAT?
Masters is like an open term. Masters in what? Be precise. Masters in which program? Masters in computer science, GRE, only GRE. STEM background should take STEM program, GRE, not GMAT. MBA finance, the ball is in your court. If you want to make an impression, you feel your quantitative skill is really good, and you want to go to top school, then yeah, please take a diagnostic for a GMAT. And if you're comfortable, then GMAT. For all others, engineering related fields, you have to take a GRE. Right. Yeah, for masters in education also, GRE, because it's non-business.
Right, we've got this, like the technical issues resolved. We go on to the next one.
Yeah, so again, we'll come back to the Q&A in the end of the webinar. Let us go to 7. So again, in economics background, top B schools and GRE was a preference. And here he did apply to business schools also. So he had a choice either to choose a GMAT or GRE, but he chose GRE. And again, this was purely personal choice. He took the diagnostic for both of them. He's one of those. And he said that GMAT will be like a little out of, my comfort zone. So absolutely, once we decided on the destinations and programs, he took both the mocks and it was his personal choice. I think, so somebody was asking me top business schools. So Profile 5 has got into a top business school, which is Duke Fuqua, which is one of the finest B school in the world. He took a GMAT. 750, 760, I don't remember exactly. GRE was never in the question, IIT background, very strong in maths since childhood. And he was like, I want to get into top B school. GRE was never on his mind because he knew he's very strong. Second of all, he wanted to create an impression. And last but not the least, his comfort and his aptitude. It was his aptitude. He got into a top B school with a very high GMAT score. So again, there are various parameters, but then it was his decision. I think there is some technical glitch. Seema, can you hear me? Yeah, it is GMAT. If you want to get into a top B school, then it is a GMAT.
Divyani, you're audible. Go on, please.
Yeah. I think from Seema's side. Okay, so before I go, I just want to discuss a very unique profile. So this is a girl from humanities and social sciences background since high school. She was a humanities in high school. Then she had honors in psychology and she worked in a luxury brand for 3-4 years. She went for MBA in luxury brand management, like in a business school. And she's in NYU Stern School of Business, but she took GRE. Here, the decision was absolutely because she was not comfortable with GMAT. She has not studied maths that much, and she was like very uncomfortable with mathematics and quant. So GRE was a good choice, and she has to take even GRE, I remember, thrice because she was not able to secure a very competitive score. And even after I think the third attempt also, her score was 322. But then overall, holistically, her profile was very strong. And she did end up into, NYU Stern for MBA in luxury brand management. So these are the few case studies. And there are many other, parameters. And there could be a lot of discussions that we could have in the Q&A section. And we can move ahead. I think these were the case studies I wanted to discuss. Yeah. Thank you, all of you.
All right, so we'll.
Hi, can you hear me? And
Seema, I was saying I have discussed the case studies. So do you have any questions? Do you want to have some discussion before we move forward?
Right. I mean, definitely. I mean, at the end of the day, from an admissions perspective, one of the questions like the students always want to kind of like narrow it down is, or should I pick this or should I pick this from an admissions perspective? Like when students come to you, what is that one advice that you actually give to make sure that, they're making a more clearer choice with respect to GRE or GMAT, or, when you guide them as to the program choice, what's the thing that you actually tell them, not just from taking the test perspective, but what do they have to do their research? Do they have to kind of like understand what they want? How does it actually go?
To be very honest, let us assume that they are applying to different programs wherein both the tests are accepted. So by default, they are applying to business schools. So I will just say, please take a test where you can have a higher score. So indirectly, I'm telling them, please take a mock, take a diagnostic. You can, just take it at home, come back to me, because as a test taker, when you have done that exercise, you have certain amount of confidence. You know, you have that clarity. Oh, this is something I'm very comfortable in, and this is not my cup of tea. So I just say that. But then, in some other kind of situations where they are applying to some other departments where GMAT is not accepted, then a GRE is the only choice.
Correct. So I think it was really insightful what both you and Vikram actually spoke about, from the perspective that you've actually brought in real life examples to talk about the kind of situations that students face. So I mean, that's really interesting. Now, thinking about, we've ended on that note where there have been, a couple of students who have made a personal choice from the perspective of the test itself and what they find comfortable. And this is where I want to extend my question to Raji, because Raji, you are an expert in GMAT and GRE as well. You have been teaching this for a really long time. So, when students actually come confused to you, there might be various perspectives that you actually make the students look at. So what are they and how do we guide them?
Okay. So actually speaking, students do get a lot of, confusion when it comes to the test. And since they've gone through maybe, a lot of discussion among the peers group itself, they have a very vague idea of the test itself. And once they get into the nuances of, okay, GRE tests this, GMAT tests that, that confusion still lingers in them. And one of the students, actually, I remember, not one, actually, many come saying that, ma'am, there's so much of vocab on the GRE. Okay. I get the jitters when I look at the words themselves. So, I mean, how am I even going to ace this test? So I think GMAT will be better. So they just have one question type that, irks them into saying that, let me go for the GMAT. But probably, the confusion stays because they still don't know what GMAT tests. They're just looking at the perspective of a GRE test. They don't know what's in store for them when they look at a GMAT test. All right. So that time, the confusion has to be cleared to tell them, look, vocab isn't all there in GRE. You need to see other strengths too. So that's the way I take them to sort of clear their confusion. All right. And I think Ram would also have got certain.
So when we, you said that the way of what the test itself contains is a very big perspective. Ram, in terms of structural difference and, what's really tested in both the tests, does it really play a big factor in that decision making?
Hi, Seema. Yes. Before moving on to the structure, I just have one real life scenario whereby one of my students who attempted the GMAT twice was unfortunately, finding it hard to reach the targeted score of his school that he was targeting. Then when he was, when he came to us, so we sort of gave him a suggestion. So he also was very clear that
he took it on his own.
No, I mean the two tests. No, he prepped with us, but the targets were so high. Okay, the cutoff was so high. So he took the GMAT course with us. He took the test twice. He could not reach the cutoff score. So he sort of made up his mind. He came to us and then he asked whether, he said he's going to take the test for the third time, but he was not sure whether he should go for a GMAT again, or maybe after preparation of GRE, he should take a GRE. So when he came to us with this question, we thought, it's not good to advise him to go for GMAT again, because he was obviously looking for a MBA program and the school he was targeting was accepting, GMAT and GRE. All right. So immediately, I said, why don't you just try a mock test in GRE and see how the test, keeps you in, So he immediately said, okay, yeah, I think that would be a good idea. And then he took the test and he was so happy that, he felt so easy, Ram, this GRE test is so easy for me, be it quant or with the vocab skills and the reading skills I have. I found this was so easy. So then I sort of gave him the preparation guide for GRE. Then he prepared for about 3 weeks only. He took the GRE. I think he got close to a 329, if I'm not wrong. And then he got admission to that.
I think a lot of students kind of like go into thinking that, yeah, I have to, do the GMAT, and that's the only way I'm going to, get, showcase or, create an impression, and they don't really realize initially that that fits them, and then come back and realize, and we always tell them, take the test and, see what really fits you. But then they eventually come back and say, you know what, now I want to try this, right? And I think it's like a perfect example of what we've been talking about.
Yeah. So it's always a good idea to have the structural differences known beforehand. If you have a chance to take, either GRE or GMAT. So when it comes to GMAT, though overall, if you look at it, one test may sound harder than the other one, but let's look at it in terms of structure. Okay. So in terms of structure, GMAT is broadly divided into 3 sections. Okay.
Right.
So a math section of 31 questions, time given 62 minutes, a verbal section, 35 questions, 65 minutes. And a third section will have an argument essay for 30 minutes and an IR section, which is the data, testing the data interpretation skills. Okay, that's for about 30 minutes. So overall, altogether, you have the GMAT test is about 3 hours and 7 minutes. So now, when you look at the GRE, so GRE again can be broadly classified into 3 sections where a student starts off with 2 essays and then gets 2 math sections. Each of the math section will have 20 questions. Time given for each section is 35 minutes. And 2 verbal sections. Each of the verbal section will again have 20 questions. Time given is 30 minutes each. All right. So overall, if you look at the number of questions in GMAT and GRE, more or less the same. Okay. So here's about 31, 35, then IR about 12, but there are sub questions. Then essay. So altogether they're the same. But one thing about time is, GMAT is for about 3 hours and 7 minutes, excluding the 2 breaks. GRE, apart from the 2 math and 2 verbal, there is one whole experimental section. Okay.
Right.
So that adds sort of a pain to a test taker. So the GRE test overall is about 3 hours and 40 or 45 minutes, depending on experimental is math or verbal. So the GRE is almost 40 minutes longer than GMAT. Okay, people who have got high endurance, and if they prefer GRE, go for GRE. But with strong math and verbal skills, grammar skills, I think GMAT. But anyway, we'll still keep the discussion on. One beautiful thing that GMAT offers, apart from a shorter test, is it also gives an option for the test taker to choose the order of the section, because I may be good at math, may not be so strong at verbal. Okay, so if that is the case, probably I would prefer to do math towards the end, because that is kind of, this is one student's perspective. So math should be done at last. So I would want to start off with maybe the essays and the IR sections, go first, then do the verbal, math towards the end. That's one order that GMAT gives us. So a student can choose IR and argument essay as the first, then verbal, then math. Then a student can also prefer to take a math, verbal, IR and argument, or a verbal, math and IR and argument. So there are 3 different choices they can make. So actually this has helped. So this choice making should not happen on the test day. This has to be, practiced in the early stages of the course or test taking, whereby one has to sort of get set to what he is good at. That's more important. If you look at GRE, the order of sections are decided only by ETS, the makers of GRE.
Right.
So a student starts off with the 2 essays, then he may get a math, a verbal, a math, verbal, or in any order. So the 5 sections after the AWA, you may end up with a 2 math, 3 verbal, or a 3 math, 2 verbal in any order. And you will never ever come to know which section is the experimental section. All right.
I think psychologically it has a big play on a person's mind if you have more control over the exam as well, isn't it?
Exactly. Yes. All right. So there might be a question within some of the attendees here. Are there not experimental questions in GMAT? Yes, there are experimental questions in math and verbal. There are very few. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So
right. So GMAT also does have experimental this thing. Probably do they actually count towards a scaling factor when they come?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that would be a very interesting detail for them.
Unfortunately, you will never able to find which questions are experimental again. So just want to keep it with themselves. All right.
Okay.
Right. So
okay. Please continue, Ram.
So the next question or the next structural difference, if we have to talk about, is the adaptiveness in GMAT and GRE. So are both the tests adaptive? Yes, of course. One thing about the GMAT, math and verbal sections, it's question-wise adaptive. So your performance on question number 1 or the response to question number 1 will affect the difficulty level of question number 2 and so on. Okay, so you have to get correct answers to many questions for you to climb up the ladder and to reach a higher level of difficulty. When you have reached higher level of difficulty, obviously you're going to end up with a high score. Now, that's about the GMAT. So it applies for both math and verbal. So when it comes to GRE, it is section-wise adaptive. So I was talking here about the 2 math and 2 verbal sections which are accountable for the score, right? So again, the performance on the first math section will affect the difficulty level of the second math section only. It will not affect the verbal, all right? So math to math, so performance on 1 will affect the the difficulty level of the second. Same applies for verbal. All right. So anyway, we will go in detail with this adaptiveness of GMAT and GRE in the next, few slides later.
Right. So
I think, yeah.
So is that with the structure, or are there more things to, understand about the structure from the GRE versus GMAT, like from a decision-making perspective?
Yeah. So I think I've talked about experimental questions.
Yes.
There's one other factor or feature, or you can call it a tool, which is the calculator. So don't sort of imagine whether I'm going to have a graphical calculator given for my GMAT or GRE. First of all, in GMAT, no calculator for the math section. Okay, so that would be a very big disadvantage. If people are not so good at mental math and still want to take GMAT. So there is a problem. Okay, so mental math has to be done without any calculator. Because of a lot of data dealing in the integrated reasoning section, GMAT is kind enough to give us access to the calculator only for the integrated section. But for math section, yeah, absolutely no for math section. So everything has to be done mentally or using scratch paper Okay. Now, when it comes to GRE, okay, here, yes, GRE gives a basic online calculator. When I say basic, it will have the calculator with very few functions. In fact, basic operations like addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. That's it. Okay. So, but sometimes, you know, it helps when it comes to sort of a quick math of, you know, 3-digit number multiplied to 3-digit number, or division or something. A quick answer is required. Of course, it is required. Okay. Anyway, I will get into online calculator again with the next slide, or the slide which follows later. All right. Okay. So these are the major structural differences, Seema.
Right, that really kind of like, you know, I think probably the primary angle from which the student can actually start. Now, you know, now that we have understood the overall structure, obviously, you know, GMAT and GRE kind of test two different skills. Does that affect the way students actually take the test? I mean, from a both verbal and a quantitative perspective as well?
Okay, so yes, Seema, they are the verbal part on the GRE and the GMAT are quite different, but on one part of both the tests, actually the test taking skill is the same, which you can see is on the reading comprehension. All right.
Right.
So whereas in GMAT, you have the grammar section, you know, accounting for say 1/3 of the test totally. So out of the 36 questions that you have on the GMAT verbal, 1/3 of it is from the grammar. Around 13 questions to 14 questions come from the sentence correction, which is totally about the few rules of the grammar.
Correct. Okay.
So this is different from what is tested on the GRE, whereas which is more on the words. So 50% of the GRE questions, which say on a section of 20 questions, 10 questions are from vocab. So in no way can a student, you know, compromise one for the other. So he has to have the vocab skills, vocab building ability to be able to conquer those questions. All right. But when it comes to passages, the rest 50% on the GRE is all with passages. And on the GMAT also, you do have the reading comprehension passages, and you have these short passages which are to do with, you know, reasoning, logical reasoning that come on the GMAT. So the strategies as such for both, or the skill needed for both GRE and GMAT, where it comes to reading comprehension, is the same. Because the questions revolve around, you know, same as if, you know, asking a primary purpose or asking why something was mentioned or infer something. These are certain questions that attach to both the tests. And the strategy hence has to be, you know, quite similar in both these tests. But when it comes to the critical reasoning, you know, on the GRE, you have very few questions that test on the critical reasoning, maybe, you know, 2 to 3 max. But on the GMAT, you have around 10 to 11 questions that may come from critical reasoning.
That's a lot.
And there are 8 to, you know, 9 types of questions that you may get asked on the critical reasoning. And usually, you know, those who come for the GMAT are quite good with the skills that require these, you know, logical thinking or logical reasoning. And hence they feel more attracted towards the GMAT. But then when it comes to the grammar, they get overwhelmed. And on the GRE, it's, you know, although it's reading comprehension, but the vocab sort of gets them overwhelmed, and hence the confusion. So as far as test taking abilities, each his own is what happens, you know, respectively in GMAT and GRE. All right.
So what I understand is like definitely more decision-making level of reasoning is actually kind of like tested on the GMAT. You know, with more of critical thinking questions, critical reasoning questions, and of course, it's kind of like really distributed. But whereas here, I think in GRE, I mean, as a lay person, I would probably kind of like assess it in this way. But each test has its own thing to kind of like take care of and kind of deal with. Yeah, of course. That's kind of like, what about the math? Does that vary a lot?
Well, I think I echo what Raji said with respect to more emphasis given on the reasoning skills in GMAT versus GRE, where there's a straightforward math. So when you look at the quantitative sections of GRE and GMAT, the concepts tested are almost the same. Okay, the topics are almost the same. But because the GRE is built for a wide variety of graduate programs, the questions on GRE are typically easier than those of GMAT. Okay. For example, as I said earlier, the GRE has a higher proportion of straightforward math questions. When it comes to GMAT, as I said earlier, again, reasoning skills are given more importance. So it doesn't mean that the math is not completely involved. Of course, reasoning skills with mathematical knowledge is very important for solving GMAT questions. Okay. As I was talking to you earlier with respect to, there's also an issue of the calculator versus non-calculator, issue. So GRE, of course, allows the use of calculator on the quant section, but the GMAT does not. The calculators should be used carefully because it can waste your time as well. But it can also be a lifesaver. Okay, so when it comes to critical calculations. So overall, what you can conclude on this is, with respect to calculator preference, maybe the GMAT would be a little harder when it comes to a math section. But of course, there are many more, parameters you have to look on. It's not just the calculator. Also, as I was talking to you about the structure, there was a complete section which was called integrated reasoning section on the GMAT.
Correct.
Yes, which actually was introduced in the year 2011 by the GMAT, just to ensure that they prepare the MBA aspirants right from the GMAT test.
Right. When I talked to you, one of the things that I actually learned was also, GRE was scored out of 800. I mean, that was news to me as well.
Yeah. So, if you ask me whether GRE does not test the data interpretation at all, no, they do test as well. So within the math section, 3 to 4 questions in a sections test the data interpretation skills as well. All right. So if someone again prefers not to practice a lot of data interpretation, because normally they are a bit time consuming. Because when you look at a normal question in math versus the data interpretation question, in a normal question, all the information will be stacked into the question itself. Whereas for a data interpretation, you will have to look for the appropriate data, then read the question, get a mix of, okay, what is required, finally, that's the way. So it takes some time, all right? So, looking at that aspect, yes, Seema.
Right. So, earlier on, you talked about how the tests are adaptive as well. I mean, does that actually create a big impact on the test taking itself and the scores that the students are bound to get? Does it affect in a big way the whole test taking process?
Oh, yes. So, in fact, I would want to start off with the GRE. Though, as I said earlier, both the tests are adaptive in nature. The difficulty of the questions you receive completely depends on how you have performed in the earlier questions. However, there is a key difference between a GRE and GMAT, where I said GRE is section adaptive and GMAT is question adaptive. So, based on the performance on the first section in GRE, your second section would be harder or easier or even medium, depending on the performance. So one good thing about the section-wise adaptive, Seema, is within each of the sections in GRE, the questions don't really change. You can get all of them right, all of them wrong, but you'll still get the same questions.
Right.
Okay? This means within a section on the GRE, you can skip hard questions and come back to them later. They'll still be the same. Okay, so within a section, within the given time, okay, the time limit of 35 minutes in a math section, people can, go back and forth between the question. So ideally, what we suggest is, when it comes to when people are getting jittery with the data interpretation question, we tell them straightforward, you have to skip those chart questions towards the end, and then you can do the easier questions, and then later on you can take up those hard questions. These are the advices we give. So that kind of leverage is given in the GRE. Now, GMAT, when it comes to GMAT, as I said earlier, performance on one question can affect the difficulty level of the next one. So which means you will never be able to go back to the previous question. You got it? Because the difficulty level of the subsequent questions based on the previous response. So there is no chance you can skip any question, first of all, because only if you answer that particular question on the screen, you'll be taken to the next question. So skipping is completely out of the talk. And also coming back is out of the talk because the adaptability has already started.
So that means making decisions in like a fraction of a second. I mean, not a fraction of a second, but the quick decision making and picking up the right answer and then moving on.
Yes, exactly. So you have to answer each question, as it appears to you. Okay, there's no way you can go back and forth. So, so the point here is because of this, this act can be very, very stressful for some students, especially we come across some students with ego. Okay, so they would want to sort of, I have done my, my engineering in IIT, who's GMAT to test my math skills. Okay, so people who have got ego, they will definitely, end up losing time a lot because, let's say their 10th question was a harder question and they have, they've been working on that question for 5 minutes, 6 minutes. It's definitely not a good test taking at all. So if you have if you have started with the GMAT test, I think more than 3 minutes is a sort of a self-suicide. Okay, you will never be able to complete the test. Okay, so you have to be very, very careful. So because of the pacing issues, GMAT has a severe penalty if someone does not complete the test, which means, so for example, let's say in the math section, there are about 31 questions and I had the time to solve, let's say 27 questions. The last 4 questions, I did not have even 5 seconds to answer. So this particular student would get a severe penalty with the final score of the math section. Now, I'll take another student. So another student, again, sort of answered 27 questions, but he had some time, let's say about 25, 30 seconds, and he had the time to at least make some, if not educated guesses, at least some random guesses, but the student was able to answer all the 31 questions. So if we look at both students' perspective, they've done 27 questions, assuming, okay, they've done 27 questions in a similar manner. Student A completely missed answering the last 4, whereas student B answered all of them, but with some random guesses. Okay, so for us, it may appear, both of them should be ending up with the same score. No, this is the game that GMAT plays. In GMAT, if you leave any questions unanswered, this is going to severely penalize. Okay, so
I mean, that's really specific. To everybody who's like asking the questions right now in the chat, I just want to tell you that we will be taking an open Q&A just as we end this. So hold on patiently. I want you to kind of like hang on to all of your questions because all of them would be answered. Yeah. So I mean, Ram, like again, adaptiveness again becomes a very big factor in decision making.
Yes.
Besides these, to both you and Raji, like there are a lot of factors that actually come into play. Are there other things that students also should look at and kind of like make the decision to kind of narrow in on the test?
Yeah. So to keep it simple, there are a few other factors. Number one is the fees. Okay, I know this is not a major factor because if someone is ready to invest 20 lakhs per year to go for an MBA degree or MS degree, okay, this is not a big thing. But then again, just to give, this is one of the factor. So GRE costs about $228 per attempt, whereas the GMAT costs $275 for a at-center test. Whereas if you are planning to take it online, it costs $300. So anyway, those commissions are not included here. So there's a dollar-rupee conversion as well. So that's negligible anyway. So these are the fees, fee structure for the GMAT and GRE. So the next factor is, I think I've talked about a little earlier. So GMAT is a shorter test in terms of time. So it's shorter almost by 40 minutes compared to the GRE. So that's one aspect you may find, would be good if you don't have that test taking endurance, that super endurance is not with you, then GMAT is 40 minutes shorter. And I think I just spoke about this anxiety and the stress, due to the adaptiveness in GMAT, compared to GRE, whereby, you have the, leverage of, doing the easier questions and then reserve the harder ones for towards the end. Okay. So these are the few other factors which sort of affect the decision-making in terms of GRE versus GMAT.
Right. Academically, bringing it back to that big question, according to both of you, which test is easier? According to you and your expertise, that you have like 20 years of experience, like, and 40 years between both of you. So what's your take?
Yeah. So, I mean, to sum it all up, Seema, what we actually see is the student matters. It's the student's perspective finally. Yeah. Right. Yes. One, Vikram and Divyani have given enough on the career choice and on the profile, etc. But again, when it comes down to the taking of the test, the student's ability, the student's academic strength, that matters a lot. So when you weigh both these tests together, obviously the major difference between the two is in the vocab skills and in the grammar skills, right? So now the student will be able to decide on which test, basically on the academic way, only when he's able to take the diagnostic test and see how questions come on the vocab or how questions come on the grammar, will he be able to decide for himself? I mean, is he sort of, does he have the capacity to even conquer such questions? All right. Of course, when he does take the help of some online courses, he's going to learn strategies. But the basic ability to sit for a test and look at these questions, and is he getting hang of how these questions come? That's a big call on his decision whether GMAT would work for him better or GRE would work for him better. All right. So I would say it's his ability, his capacity to face questions, his performance, and of course, to add to this, sitting for a test for 3 hours long and more, that's again, some find that job itself tough. So all this put together will certainly, make way for a student's choice on which test better. All right.
Yeah, and I think we actually offer a free practice test as well. I mean, Mani actually offers a free practice test also. And I don't think taking that first test should be hard for anybody because
exactly
of that free resource.
Yeah, so we've seen students who start with a very basic, score on the GRE or on the GMAT, as low as 9 on the GMAT maybe, and as low as 135 on the verbal. But once they've taught certain strategies, they are able to scale up. So the ability is known and understood only when they apply the strategies taught. So some might probably have the correct guide to be able to understand, yay, you do have the strength to do the vocab. You do have the strength to do the grammar. All right. So that push and that, guide needed from Princeton Review probably does the game for them. There's so many of the students, who have got to the great score with the basic minimum start that they had. So ability, performance is actually a good stakeholder for the choice. All right.
Right. And bringing it back to the admissions perspective again, Devyani and Vikram, I pose this big question to you. From your perspective, GRE or GMAT for the students?
So all things considered, if a student is comfortable with both, Seema, just repeat the question, please.
So yeah, I was just saying that, from a final perspective of looking at things, to the students. So should, as a student, like let's say I'm coming and asking, so should I pick up GRE or GMAT, as a winding up note?
GRE to keep all your academic options open. GMAT if you're sure you want to be in management. If management studies is the way forward, then GMAT is the simple answer. Experiment with the format. Think about all the facts that Ram and Rajesh shared based on test structure, test design, curriculum, everything. Take practice tests and then decide.
Right. So I think all our participants have been waiting very patiently. They've been having a lot of questions that they've been, wanting to ask directly. So I'm going to kind of directly Diksha Shishodia actually asked the question. Thinking about to go abroad for MBA course, but is there any scholarship? Of course, budget is the thing where we are lacking. So I think that's a big question that often comes, right? For MBA programs, are there scholarships open to students? Very broad question, I think, from what all the things that you have spoken about. How would you actually address that? I think Vikram or Devyani, either of you can actually take up that question.
Yeah, so traditionally business schools have given more guidelines, or at least published more guidelines on their website about directly linking scholarship with a high GMAT score. And especially the European business schools tend to do that a lot more transparently than the US business schools, for example. So yes, scholarship, GMAT has always been a criteria to get scholarship apart from merit and need. That's how they've done it traditionally. So students should actually engage with the targeted business schools. A lot of European business schools at the same time offer CV review as a pre-application step. So upload your CV, get it reviewed, start a dialogue with the intended business school. In parallel, experiment with both exams and see which one suits you better. And if the targeted business school is saying that they will consider GRE for scholarship as well as admission, then yes, go ahead with GRE. I think it's as simple as that.
Right. So there's this question from Krishna Chaitanya. Devyani, you would be the best person to answer this. Which is good for MBA in business analytics? I think, if I'm not wrong, it's business analytics itself. We have, okay, I'll let you answer.
Yeah. So see, if you want to go to business analytics, whether in the States or in the Europe, again, if you want to create an impression, take a GMAT. Okay. And generally, business analytics is taken by students who are from either a business background or even from engineering and STEM background. Okay. And you want to go for a business analytics, you do have work experience in this. I would say if you have very strong mathematics and if you're comfortable, go ahead and take a GMAT. Otherwise, again, take a diagnostic. If you are scoring 330 in GRE and 650 or less than 650 in GMAT overall, so it's better you take that one where you can score better. And in the US, especially you're going for a business analytics, apart from the testing, there are various variables. I'm just briefly saying, so, overall profile is very important holistically, everything, it's like a jigsaw. GRE and GMAT is just one of the components. So there are so many things I will see in the resume of an applicant. And then according to his aptitude and preference, we could say, and obviously we have to have a very strong holistic profile. Getting into a top school is not solely dependent on GRE, but yes, they are one of the main factors. So yeah, that's
I'm not sure this question, how relevant it is. I mean, with respect to GRE versus GMAT, but Jyoti Meera has asked, are there any courses or exams that student can prefer if he or she wants to go for medical courses?
So for the med school, they call it med school in the States and, in the Canada, the school process is different and you have to have a pre-med first. For the pre-med, it's a 3-4 degree, 3 to 4 years of program. And then you have to clear an exam, which is called MCAT. And on the basis of the merit of MCAT, your med school will start. And after the completion of med school, there is like residency, USMLE 1 and 2. It's a very long process. But in the UK, it's a different. You have to take an entrance and you can start immediately after grade 12, like we have here in India.
Understood. Okay, so I think this question is very academic oriented because Parag says that I have given GRE. Now I have decided to give GMAT. So should I go for GMAT?
I will ask him which program he is, targeting, what he wants to study. So
right. And I think Ram and Raji also, like in terms of academic perspective also,
Yeah, I mean, he isn't going to give tests just for the heck of it. He has to have some target, some intention towards taking a test. So if he's just wanting to take the test to understand how it is, he can go ahead. But then there has to be some dream that he has in some dream university, some dream course, which would sort of take him ahead to, does he actually need to take the GMAT to be able to get to?
Right. Again, bringing it back to what Divyani said, right? So he has not mentioned or he has not really told us what's his purpose yet. So I'm going to move on to the next question and wait for him to actually get back. So somebody says, so basically GRE is more, Diksha says basically GRE is more about math centric than GMAT. I think.
No, that's not true. Both of them have a verbal and quant section.
Right.
So we could not say that one particular exam is more towards maths. No.
And I think Ram has actually quite well detailed exactly what goes into both, and definitely very similar math, but tested in different ways.
Yes.
Okay, so Shivakumar asks, I am an intermediate now for going BTech in US. How much percentage is required for GRE test? Okay, so he's basically intending to go for a UG, a master. Sorry, he's already. Okay,
undergrad.
It's an undergrad. I don't think GRE is the test for you.
He has to take an SAT or ACT.
Yeah.
And he has to have very good extracurricular activities also in the US.
Right. So A.O. Shah asked the question, the package rate we will be getting after completing MBA from rank 70 to 100 B schools. Okay, so basically asking what kind of packages can they really expect career-wise?
That depends on your industry first and the kind of the business school that you have got. MBA is the most sought after degree. So I could not just pinpoint immediately on top of my head, but you are going for MBA with specialization in finance, there is entrepreneurship and innovation, there is management, there is luxury brand management. So it depends upon the industry and the concentration and specialization and about, the reputation of the B school. If you're going into a tier 1 B school, then sky is the limit, whether it is in North America or European business school like ESSEC or INSEAD. So that way.
Yeah. It's definitely. Now, this is a question that Vikram addressed also at some point. That is, Sunil asks, is GMAT good for career?
For a select set of business schools, yes. For a select set of industries, yes.
Right. So that's very, very very category driven, isn't it? I mean, right. Okay, this is an interesting question because it kind of like reverse the entire thing. Can I get into business schools if I prefer to give GRE?
Yeah, obviously, yes. Yeah, you can, obviously.
Right.
You have a stellar GRE and definitely. And obviously, I will again say as an advisor, everything has to be good, your overall profile, and you can get into a good B school.
Correct. Aditya, he's asked, how do you access the free GRE test? You can actually go to manyagroup.com website, and when you click the student dashboard, you can log in, and there on the top, you would have access to the Princeton Review free test. So that's how you can access. Can we do an MBA in IT? Punya Rao asked this question.
I think this is not a correct term. There is something called a tech MBA. Of late, some business schools in North America has introduced. So again, the process remains the same. You can take both GMAT or GRE. You need to have work experience, minimum 3 years. And the process remains the same. So somebody who have engineering background, they can go to a STEM MBA or tech MBA.
Right.
Yeah.
So Akshay asked this question. Can you please elaborate more on which exam I should take if I want to go for an MBA program? I wish to pursue PhD post my MBA, and I have a low bachelor's GPA. I wish to impress the school with my GRE or GMAT test score.
No, so here the question is PhD in which field? What he wants to do? PhD in management.
Right. So he first wants to do his MBA, then he wants to do his PhD.
So if I have to take this decision, understanding
management, he says management, PhD in management later.
Okay, so both the tests are valid for 5 years. So I think GRE is the best option because some of the PhD programs, some of them for management, yes, will accept GMAT, but we could not be 100% sure for PhD. So it's better to take one test and that would be valid for 5 years.
Right. So we have this. Okay, so we have this question from Kusum. Is there any scholarship available for industrial management for USA based on GRE score or based on the application?
So for the industrial management, though the word management is used, you have to take a GRE. Most of the programs for industrial management is not in a business school. It's in some other department. So again, holistically, overall profile, a stellar GRE, very good resume. You could have a certain merit-based scholarship, or for master's level, there is something called assistantships, teaching assistantship and, research assistantship. So that's how you could take care of your expenses.
Understood. So Aman is asking this question. I think Vikram, out to you, you talked about CV review option. So he was like, can you give some examples of B schools that actually give the CV review option?
Yeah, so the Rotterdam School of Management at Erasmus University in Netherlands, they give a CV review option. And the University of Rochester, Simon MBA in the US gives a CV review option. A lot of B schools give a CV review option. Some of the Spanish B schools provide it. Some of the German B schools provide it. Some of the British B schools also now of late provide it.
Right.
Woodside is one of them.
Okay. So Saleha Tasneem has this question. Do all countries like India, USA, UK, Europe consider GRE for their admissions? And how much score is actually considered good in big highlights?
The answer to the question is, I could say yes, because there are multiple destinations using GRE for master's level program or graduate programs. So in the UK, you want to go to something like Imperial College, London School of Economics, or for that matter, some programs in Cambridge and Oxford, you need to take a GRE. And even for European business schools or European programs, which include some destinations like France, Germany, and obviously in the North America, both US and Canada. So if you take a GRE, you have you're opening a lot of avenues for yourself in terms of your career. And the scholarship is dependent, I'm again saying, on the overall profile, and a stellar GMAT will give you a launchpad. Like it's something that can makes you stand out to the admissions committee.
Right.
Yeah.
So Aman again asked this question. I wish to go for a basic MBA from US, IB or German TU9 schools. Strength is verbal and weakness is quant. Should I go for GRE and GMAT? I think this needs both an academic perspective as well as admissions perspective. So starting off with US, IB or German TU9 schools, GRE or GMAT. Divyani, first, would you like to go?
And take a diagnostic here, take a mock. Because even if you think that, probably your verbal is strong or maths is not strong, but until you have taken the test, how would you define it?
Acceptance wise, do they accept both?
Yeah. Acceptance, no problem. Take a mock for both of them and see where do you stand.
Right. Raji and Ram, have you seen through, like, whenever somebody says that, their strength is verbal and weakness is quant, what have you seen in terms of how students actually handle the test with respect to GRE versus GMAT? Raji, you're muted.
As Divyani just said, until they take the dip, they won't know how cold or how hot. All right. So they have to look into, what the test tests. So verbal strong means in which aspect of verbal are they strong? Did they actually see the question types? Have they understood how the question goes? Because see, just communicating well in English is not all that tests, right?
Absolutely.
It tests more than that. Your comprehension skills, your analytical skills, your reasoning skills, all these put together is what a test makes. So taking the test is the best way to decide on that.
And Ram, in terms of, like, clearly they said that weakness is quant.
We have had students, for example, if you're talking about GMAT perspective, as low as 13 in a GMAT score. So 13 corresponds to 9th percentile. Okay. So they have reached to a level, I would say, of 46, 47%, score in GMAT. So which is really good. So it's just that, they should not have mind blocks set that they are so bad at math. So here at Manya, the Princeton Review, though we would be, sort of touching up the math, we would be giving them the skills or prepare them for the test using our time-tested strategies. So when they say they are weak at math, it could be probably, they are taking so much of time to solve a particular problem. Okay. Whereas here, we give them the knack of solving the problem in, a stipulated time or even less time. We have so many techniques and strategies that takes care of, and we help them understand the question, do it in a different way, keep the conventional way out. So there are so many things. So we can guarantee that we can give a very good improvement, even if a student comes up with a very low score in math. Same applies in GRE. Okay, there are situations where they get 136, they've reached a 160, after the course, they've got the real score of math 160, or at least, close to that. So absolutely, nothing is hard. It's just that, little bit of dedication, hard work, everything put for the 2-3 months they are, preparing to definitely get them the good score.
So one question has been repeatedly asked by multiple people now, from both scholarship and otherwise. Everybody's been asking this question: what is a good GMAT or a GRE score? The Janta really wants to know.
The higher the better, in fact, because scholarship is asking the business school to give you funds. So for admissions, the average GMAT may be 700 for a particular institution, but for scholarship, it might be 750 or 760, or they may actually be able to choose the highest GMAT scorers. I think the idea here is to identify whether GMAT is a criteria for giving scholarship at your targeted business schools. And if it is, then try to get as high a score as possible.
Right. So Diksha again asks, I'm from humanities background, currently pursuing BBA final year. Should I go for that exam? That exam, I'm not sure which exam, because she's having bad scores in math always. So I think Diksha, I think everybody's been telling the same thing. Take the test. I think everybody in this panel has established this one fact. Take the free test and see kind of like how you're dealing with both the tests. Is work experience compulsory for an MBA in USA? Aditya asked this question. And guys, I'll be taking maybe like 2 more questions and winding this up. So yeah, is work experience compulsory for an MBA in USA? Aditya asked this question.
So the answer to that is yes. At the top 100 universities, work experience is typically required. And then at a lot of regional universities, work experience may not be required. They will be happy to admit you with a GMAT score of 550 and above. So it totally depends on the schools and the ranking of the schools and the location of the schools that you're targeting.
Right. Okay. Okay, so I have Lalit ask this question. I wish to go for an basic MBA. Okay, this is same. All right. Same person as asked. Two people have asked the same question. Okay, again, I think, can you give me okay, this is experimental questions. Would you advise self-study for GRE and GMAT or any courses for preparation? Well, yeah, courses for preparation, but I think I'll let, a very realistic answer come from, Ram and Raji, you can take this up.
Again, the very first question, you start with the test, okay? Start with the test and then see if you're already scoring closer to your target score. Yes, there are prep options like self-preparation that would guide you. And if you want to take the test very soon, within a month or within maybe 2 weeks time, you already have the skills for math and verbal, I'm sure you can go for a self-prep. But the test should decide, and the test should be taken diligently. It should not be taken, answering randomly. So that's more important. That would sort of give them, but definitely, as Seema said, you will learn lots of strategies in math and verbal, whereby, you will be able to skyrocket to a 750 or 760, as Vikram was telling many of you, that higher the score, better the university, or, so.
The impact.
Yes.
So there's this question, and probably this is the last one I'm going to take for today. Should I give GRE for scholarship? I mean, I think this comes from where there's like test optional nature existing right now. Devyani, would you like to answer that in terms of, is it essential for them to actually give GRE for scholarship? Or would it be good for them to actually give the GRE or, take the GRE?
So I think it depends upon the context of their profile,
Okay.
If their resume has nothing to offer, they don't have strong letters of recommendation, they don't have some, publication projects. So just to, stand out, they need a stronger or very stellar GRE, because I will see the profile holistically. So that depends on the overall profile. And yes, GRE would add value to your profile if you can score 325 plus.
Right.
But then I don't know the program he wants to go, so nothing is there.
So, right. I'm so sorry, guys. I know you have like a million questions, and we'll be more than happy to answer all of these questions, but probably you can actually reach out to the number that you actually see below, or write, email us. Also, if you want to kind of like understand how we teach both these tests, or, to get a one-on-one admissions expert session interaction, you can actually go to manyagroup.com, and right on the top, you would find a book or demo button. And if you click that, you would be able to either, book a session with our academic experts, or you'd be able to actually book a one-on-one session with our admission experts. So probably you will get a lot more questions answered from a very personalized point of view. But so that brings us to the end of this panel discussion. You guys have been really amazing, and I want to thank Devyani, Vikram, Raji, Ram. You have given a lot of insights from a very wide-ranging perspective. And I think their response, the participants' response. Thank you so much for this session. Really kind of like says it all. So a big thank you to all of you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
We've also had this opportunity to meet so many of them with their bubbling questions. So more to come, maybe with demos and other sessions. Yeah.
Right. Right. All right. And thank you, all of our participants. Please reach out, and thank you for being really patient. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Seema.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
Bye-bye.